for us in Boston. So, Jason, what does it mean that the Coast Guard is going to lead now?
Right, and just to point out, Alisyn, as you know, not just the U.S. Coast Guard, but in addition to that, we've also gotten word today that the National Transportation Safety Board is also going to be a part of this investigation. And in addition to that, you've got the Canadian Transportation Board involved as well. What's going to be key to the investigation, though, forensic evidence, right? You've got to get as much as you can, gather as many pieces as you can of the Titan as possible. That's why it's so important for those remotely operated vehicles to continue work on the ocean floor. So while you've heard word about vessels pulling out of the area, and indeed that is happening in the North Atlantic, those ROVs, those remotely operated vehicles, are staying there. They're continuing to scour the debris area, trying to get as much evidence as possible, because what forensic experts are going to have to do is they're going to have to get pieces of that hull, and they're going to have to try to do some testing on that to try to come to some conclusion about the integrity of the hull. This, as we've heard from so many people over the last 24 to 48 hours who say that they raised issues with OceanGate about its safety protocols and about the integrity of the Titan. Alisyn?
But Jason, what about this marine certification company that rejected a request to certify the Titan?
Right. Lloyd's Registrar, and that is the company that typically does this type of marine vessel registration. According to what we've heard here at CNN, there was a request from OceanGate to have Titan certified. This was back in 2019, and this company denied the request to do that. Did not want to work with them. The company did not provide a reason as to why that happened. But what's interesting about that, you'll remember that OceanGate on its website had said that they had decided to forego getting registered, saying that it was standing in the way of innovation. That was something that was up on their website. That website has now been taken down. Alisyn?
Okay, still a lot of questions. Jason Carroll, thank you very much. Let's bring in David Waud. He was a passenger on the Titan sub in 2021. In fact, he took the same trip on board the Titan to see the Titanic wreckage 2 years ago. David, thank you so much for your time and for being here. Back at that time, 2 years ago, when you took this trip down to view the Titanic, did you have any reservations about the safety of the submersible?
No, I did not. And in fact, I felt very lucky to be one of only 200 some odd people who would have ever seen the Titanic underwater at the 12,500 foot level. And now I feel, of course, very lucky that I went on the 5th trip with Titan when the hull was still strong enough to withstand that pressure. But I did not have any reservations. I thought the trip was very professionally run. I adored Stockton and PH, who were on the trip with me. Only Stockton was in the submersible, not PH on that particular dive. But I didn't have any reservations. I just was so excited to be doing something that I'd been hoping to do for 11 years.
And what did Stockton tell you at that time about safety? What did you ask him? Did you know, for instance, that he had employed a sort of unorthodox construction of the submersible that other people in the industry didn't know if it would work? Basically, it wasn't industry standard. Did you know that at the time?
No, I did not know that. I did know because I was originally supposed to go out in 2019 when they thought the pressure test would be finished and Titan would be able to take out passengers in 2019. And there were some sort of problems with weather in the Bahamas where they were testing it and other things. And so they scratched all those trips that were scheduled for 2019. I think then the Titan was tested and found maybe it had to be reinforced some more, which I think was done during 2020. I don't know all the details in that. And I was pretty confident 2021 when I was on the trip that it was safe.
So David, what was the trip like? Did you get a good view of the Titanic?
Okay, that particular trip I was on, which was on the 4th day of the 5-day trip, we ended up near the stern rather than the bow because you're never sure what the currents are. And where we were released and started to do the 2-hour descent, we ended up much closer to the stern. So I was very disappointed. I didn't get to the bow, but the stern is still fascinating. It's a mangled, very big piece of metal. And we also were in the debris field the next day, which was the last day for all those summer trips, 3 other men went down with Stockton and PH and actually got to film the bow. And of course, when everyone thinks of the Titanic, they think of the bow. And I was also filming because I was going to make a movie for charities about this trip. So I was disappointed, but still the whole process of going down 12,500 feet was amazing. So I considered it a very successful trip.
And what was it like? I mean, down there, was it pitch black? Are you all just looking out that one window? Are you all taking turns in that submersible?
Oh, there also was a computer screen that fed us all the video footage from a camera that was mounted on top of the Titan. But otherwise, the 2 men in front of me who were seated looking right out the 21-inch viewport and myself right behind them, that's what we were looking out of. But it got dark fairly quickly. We then went through a little zone with phosphorescence, which was neat. And then it got pitch dark again all the way until we got close to the bottom. Then Stockton turned on the lights. And so when we hit the bottom, we could see the silt come up all around us. It took a few minutes to settle. Then he started to use the thrusters to move us around.
Was it freezing cold?
No, it wasn't that cold because we had just arrived at the bottom, but we did have different layers of clothes with us because it was very warm at the top when we got into the submersible, and it certainly got colder and colder as we went down, but I don't remember it being really, really cold.
Were there any moments during that whole process for you that I guess took a couple of hours? Were there any moments that felt dicey? Was there any moment that you were nervous?
No, I was not nervous at all. I thought I was in wonderful hands, a very professional team. Every day we had meetings at 7 in the morning, 7 at night, and they would talk about what we were going to do. The first 3 days, because of weather, all the dives were scrubbed, but they were so professional in their presentations. I did not have any problems anywhere going down. Now, I've done some other things that are a little bit dangerous. I'm certainly not an extreme adventurer at all, but I don't get scared as easily as a lot of people, and I don't get claustrophobia very often, which I think was lucky being in that submersible for more than 10 hours.
Yeah, I can tell you don't scare easily, certainly. A lot's been made in other reports of how there was a kind of low-tech feeling to the construction. It felt a little jerry-rigged in there. You know, it was kind of a video game controller, products from off the shelf used to construct it. Did you see some of that?
Only the video game controller, and Stockton was very proud of that. I mean, he certainly did not hide the fact that anybody could control that submersible from this. I mean, I was not allowed to, but from this game controller. He was proud of it. He certainly was not trying to hide that, but I've learned since this accident, I've seen some other video of other people in there and saying there were some more things that he kind of bought off the shelf. But he felt that, I mean, he wouldn't have gone down dive after dive. He was the pilot on almost every trip if he hadn't felt that that submersible was 100% safe.
David, now that you've had these 24 hours to think about this tragedy, do you have a theory on what happened?
Right when I heard that they'd lost communications with the submersible, I thought that it probably had imploded. And I just thought that because I knew they had not reached the bottom, at least when they had the last communication from it. They were still 45 minutes or so from reaching the bottom. So I didn't think they could be tangled up. There are many, many different ways to release weights to get back up to the surface if they had had a problem with that. So I just kind of, but I didn't say in all the interviews I did at that point, obviously, that I thought it had imploded. And I kept positive the way almost everyone else did. But that certainly was my first thought, especially since I knew there had been some reinforcing and some problems with testing back in 2019. That was my first thought.
Well, David Waud, thank you for sharing your experience with us. It's really interesting to talk to somebody who did this very trip and to hear what it was like. And of course, we're happy like you are that you got to have that experience. So thanks for being here.
It was amazing.
That's nice
You're
to hear.
welcome.